There was nothing on the market good enough, punchy enough to get my consultants billing quickly in tough markets. Nothing that engaged my consultants, keeping them hungry for deals. Nothing that kept them sharp. See, no one was as good at training my people as I was. But this took a lot of my time. What was available for my senior consultants? How could I maximize their revenue? There was nothing on the market that truly made my people feel invested in, that I would be comfortable putting them in front of. So we made it. Find out why people are joining the RecWire Plus recruitment platform. Link in the show notes. Back to the show.
All right. Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I'm joined today by Rich Evans, formerly known from his time at Bolt, but doing a million different things at the moment. What's the crack today, lad?
All good, mate. All good. Good to catch up as always. Good to have a little battle before this. It's like, start of the podcast, you're like, we just spoke, mate. We're all good. But yeah, all's well in my world. All's well in my world. Good break, as you know, in Portugal for the new year. Things seem positive out there in the marketplace. It might be back to school vibes for a lot of people, but hey ho, onwards to 2025, mate.
Tell me, you're based in Manchester?
Leeds.
Leeds.
Yeah.
What's the? He said that like, don't never say that again.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's probably flip. I'm a Man United fan living in Leeds, so I kind of like need to be hard as fuck or be able to talk your way out of fights. Probably the latter, I'd say. So yeah, nothing against Manchester at all. Love the place.
What's the recruitment vibe in Leeds like, as opposed to Manchester?
Good question. It's very incestuous, like most places. Like a lot of the businesses are all sprung off the back of certain businesses in the 90s and the noughties and the rest of it. I don't think it's as collaborative. I was speaking at an event for the Bristow and Hardy lads in Manchester in December. It's like you put an event on there, you'll get a room full of recruiters and they'll collaborate and speak to people a little bit like your required events down in London and stuff like that. It's all quite collaborative. It might be just because I don't get an invite. But I don't think Leeds is very collaborative. It's still a little bit like, just you don't really collaborate with each other or openly collaborate with each other that much. And it's a little bit, the old flagging each other off deal.
There's more like exec search or semi-exec search firms and life sciencey type stuff happening there, as opposed to like the tech and renewable that you get down in Manchester. Is that fair?
I think traditionally, yeah. Traditionally, and again, it's probably from the firms that we mentioned there in terms of like from the 90s and noughties, very exec search heavy. So traditionally and historically, from what I gather anyway, it's mainly been in exec search. You've also got obviously your bigger players, your Venn groups, your Robert Halfs, your Real Staffing, your S3s and all the rest of it that most of them have got regional offices up here as well. So bit of a mix, loads going on, like most major cities. There's always new businesses popping up and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's all right.
So what have you been up to?
So post exit of Bold, which was fucking 2.5 years ago now, I think, mate.
2.5 years ago. Wow.
Seems to have flown. So 4 things really keep me busy. So number one is investing in some startups, some guys getting going. That's recruitment, marketing, across the board a little bit. So helping people get going with both capital and support, which to be honest is, love that, skin in the game. And I love supporting those guys, working with some good people on that front. Number two, typically doing some one-to-one consultancy stuff, some coaching, founders and business owners, which I love as well. Good set of clients on that front. And we've got the Unbound community that we run, which Chris Peace has just come on board actually after his exit of East Recruitment a few months ago. So we've got a free community there, some training we do. We've got a product where me, Chris, and Tristan are helping some businesses from a strategic and consultancy perspective there as well. a little bit of property. Like the latest one was a laundrette of all things, mate. So there you go, quite varied.
So you're just messing and playing on LinkedIn all day and shaking down founders and helping them do things in what type of startups?
Yeah, so that's exactly what one of my good mates, Andy Wardle, would say, who's still at the coalface of the recruitment business and the rest of it. It's like, all you do, mate, is book about on LinkedIn all day. So yeah, there you go. Um, yeah, in terms of startups, a lot of it, obviously, a lot of my network has been recruitment over the years. So a lot of it is in the recruitment industry. One of the business I've got off the ground is engineering recruitment business with a chap called Paul Barker, who's doing really well. Really enjoying working with him. But it tends to fall either recruitment or marketing agencies essentially. And
Yeah.
believe it or not, in terms of like a lot of how they're run, there's a lot of similarities. Look, it's B2B sales, it's B2B marketing, it's getting the right people on board, it's getting the right processes, systems, support, and all the rest of it in place. Like they do run in quite a similar fashion. Obviously, there is different nuances and differences, but from a strategic perspective, there's a lot of similarities between the two as well.
Tell me about your experiences in the rec tech world, the world that you were in with Bold. I know it's a website, but I would count it as rec tech. What was that experience like trying to sell to 30,000 recruitment agencies in the UK? How can you kind of just give us an insight for because I obviously know it, I live it, but a lot of
Yeah,
people don't really have a full grasp on how incestuous that is, how you need some key relationships, how things really work in that world.
yeah, yeah. Good, great question as well again, mate. Um, so ultimately, we all know recruitment is incestuous. Everyone knows everyone. Like you talk about 6 degrees of separation. I think in the recruitment world, it's probably like one or two, isn't it? Like that's the way it is. So for me, in terms of like building that business from the ground up, like reputation was everything. Like it was all about reputation, and ultimately knowing that because it is so incestuous and it's also the right thing to do, is do a good job. Like do what you say you're going to do, a little bit more, look
Mm.
after your clients. Um, and ultimately the rest will become easier. Don't get me wrong, like any other business, we had to market well and sell well and get the right processes and the rest in place. But I in the early days, like when I was front facing and on the coal face of it, it was like my motto was like portfolio over profits. Um, and also like I wanted every single project. So we'd have like a portfolio of projects on the website or whatever, and that's what people saw in terms of the product. Like every single project that I was involved with, it was a case of I want this to be the top of the portfolio, and then the next one to be the top of the portfolio. And just try and just keep those standards and quality up across the board, essentially. Yeah, I love selling to recruiters. Like obviously, I started in recruitment. I've been in recruitment. I'm involved in recruitment businesses. I've got shares in recruitment businesses, and yeah, I've lived and breathed that world. I ultimately started Bold as I was running a recruitment agency, and I struggled with the supplier for websites and all the rest of it, and thought, do you know what? There's a gap in the market here a little bit, and then once that took off and concentrated on that a little bit. So yeah, like from a sales perspective, like always, I know recruitment can get a bad rep and that in certain industries, but I like recruiters and they've always enjoyed either working in recruitment businesses or selling to them. It's good crack. So yeah, that's probably the long and short of it, mate. And I'm sure we can go into a few more specific areas if you want.
Yeah, how did you get your sales process right? So I've built the learning and development platform at
Yeah,
Recwire now, and we have our first batch of customers. It's working off its debt, and I can it's it's a brilliant product. It's a mixture of live and video based solutions, and I feel I don't have that proper sales machine in place. What did you do? Because you bootstrapped as well, didn't you?
yeah.
So what did you do to like what was your overall your strategy from day one like to like coming in, knocking on doors, Like, how'd you go about it? Like, walk us through it.
Yeah, fine. So it's probably more of a philosophy than like just saying this is the exact strategy. And if I told you what worked, like going back 6 years ago now or whatever, like exactly that's not going to fucking work today. But
No.
for me, like the top level principles and like philosophy of sales don't change. So I started my sales career knocking on doors around Leeds council estates, and literally just cold calling, knocking on doors, trying to sell people TV packages. Um, and then got into like B2B sales, and then got into recruitment. So it's kind of like a bit of a mix of experience, and ultimately a lot of the principles for me like don't tend to change, whether it's a super short sales cycle or even a longer one. But I always break my like if I'm looking at a sales strategy, it's just break it down into three areas. Like if we're going to take someone from not knowing who the fuck we are to being a paying customer, um, I'll say we need three things. Number one is the retention in the first place.
Mm.
Um, Number two is the time, and then number three is the money. Ultimately breaking it down in that in terms of okay, well we need to get the retention. Like what strategies have we got in place in that? Okay, we've got these guys' attention, and we need to build up the time. And for me, that's the trust building part. It's the dating part. It's how many dates can you take them on until they want to get married to you. And then the final bit is obviously money and sales conversion and all the rest of it. Now, most people tend to be most interested in those first two bits. Ultimately, like there's only a certain amount of ways to like a lot of people will like overcomplicate sales and think like they're missing a trick and stuff like that. There's only a certain amount of ways to get people's attention and to get the time. So if we're talking about channels, obviously we've got email, we've got social media, we've got knocking on the door, we've got picking up the phone. And ultimately, when we're like, if I'm helping people build a strategy within their business now, it's ultimately not just what I'll play to the strengths and also team members as well. We might have some team members where, you know what, some people are shit at LinkedIn and DMs and all the rest of it. Other people are really creative with their emails. Other people are just unbelievable smashing the phones and cold calling. It's like, what resources have we got in front of us? Where can we plug them into that process, if that makes sense? So could talk forever about this, mate, because this is kind of like the stuff that I love and like staying on top of. And I think if you said to me like I'm a salesperson at heart, and ultimately that's where I enjoy spending my time making sure like ahead of the curve with marketing and sales and all the rest of it, because it's a lifeblood of any business, isn't it? Like got the sales, like you can sort all the other stuff out. So it was always kind of like applying those principles. So we did various things at different times, like across different channels, and had to mix it up and had to get creative at various stages of the business to make sure that we could keep bringing the money in and building it up essentially. But happy to talk specifically about any of that, mate. But I'll shut up because I think we said enough.
No, and it's I know it's a big question. How did you get your first 10 sales?
Yeah, so first 10 sales was just out and out prospecting. So whether it's email, phone, like LinkedIn DMs, whatever it is, it was out and out prospecting. And it's weird how things come full circle. Actually, I mentioned Chris earlier on in terms of him joining the Unbound community and the stuff that we offer on that front as well. So Chris was kind of like my first big sale. I think it was our first like 10 grand plus deal. And that was early doors. That was outreach, cold prospecting, driving all the way up to Edinburgh to go and go and meet him, building up his trust. And if you think about it then, like we had zero portfolio, we had like no experience in what we were doing. We were up against obviously people who had a lot more than us, and it was making that effort, like being responsive, like willing to go the extra mile in the sales process to say, I remember leaving that meeting, he was like, the gig's yours, mate. Walking away absolutely buzzing with our first big deal, if that makes sense. So, but there is, I think, like you're questioning, because it's like first 10 sales, that's okay. Like grit, determination, hard work. There's different stages, isn't there, in terms of like, building it up in terms of getting it consistent.
And then your portfolio then, hey, I've got these 10 on board. We're demonstrating them. Can I come show you what we've done for them? what are you paying? Because I think you priced things quite well as well. You weren't too cheap, but you definitely weren't as expensive as the market leader. So you had that point in the middle where your designs were a bit cooler, but you didn't have the massive ongoing monthly cost, as far as I remember, that the other. So you could
Yeah.
fight on price when you needed to. Um, so was it just a case of grabbing those first 5, 10, and then making the portfolio shine and shine and shine? Because I know whenever we partnered with you at Required, we were able to take straight away. You'd already been with 5 or 6 well-known people in our community, so we were able to just showcase it, and then they were able to go, yeah, that was good, and then the rest got a bit excited, and then the sales started coming in from there.
Yeah, I think we can apply that across any industry. Which I'm a big believer of that. I'm, like, big believer in early days. Like, no one knows who you are, no one trusts you. Like, you've got to go to war to start building things up. Be applied to recruitment if we're entering a new market, for instance. Ultimately, like, evidence and credibility is the number one sales tool you'll ever have. It's something that compounds as well. So, obviously, the more you get, the easier things get over time. And I think that can be applied to literally any industry as well. So you hear a lot, maybe more so in the creative industry, but I also believe in recruitment, and I might get called out for this a little bit, because everyone's always like in recruitment, like, fucking don't drop your fees and all the rest of it. And I get that completely. Of course, I get that, but it's a bit like, I'm all for, like, you've got to prove your worth before you can charge the big bucks. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that. Like, go out there, prove your worth, prove you can do the job, get some evidence of it, and then eventually you can start charging more money. That's how you get paid for it. I remember someone saying to me, look, how do you sell a 15 grand website? It's like, well, you need 15 grand level websites in your portfolio, essentially. But again, can be applied across the board. I think the evidence piece is a massive thing that people miss. I also think it's a thing in terms of, like, people give up too early as well, because that's a hard bit. Like, the initial bits are the hard yards in terms of getting that, and ultimately sales will get easier. Yeah, obviously as a business grows, different challenges come and all the rest of it as well.
Tell me, as you got it built up and you had your exit from the business, how did it feel the moment that money hit your bank account?
Yeah, I've been asked this before, so I've kind of, like, thought about it before, and the honest answer is relief, more than anything else. I was obviously the process in terms of legals, obviously the other party raising funds and financing the deal and all the rest of it, like, takes a little bit of time, and it might have took about 6 months or something, but ultimately, like, as soon as we knew it was happening, then you kind of, like, checked out a little bit psychologically.
Yeah.
And also, it's like, I didn't want to be too hands-on and then drop the bombshell on the staff. I kind of wanted them a little bit to it used to be not being there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a sudden change like when I exited. So I was in limbo period a little bit. Fortunately as well, like, we built the business to a point where we had great team. We had people looking after heading up the sales, people heading up the project side of things, where actually, like, pretty redundant anyway. And didn't want to. I love being on the coal face, as you could probably tell from what we spoke about. Like, I love doing sales, I love dealing with clients, I love doing projects, but we'd hired people for those roles. And all of a sudden I'm sat there thinking, fuck, I don't really like this anymore, because I like the action.
Yeah.
But then I can't go back in and step on these people's toes who are doing a good job. So being through that, obviously, naturally, a lot of people, once you get to that stage, might say, well, we'll just go and play golf. But I said to you before we started recording, I'm shit at that. So that was no good for me. So there'd kind of been like a period where probably lost a little bit of purpose because I was in limbo. And I knew as soon as, like, that was signed, sealed, and delivered, that I could just get back out there and start doing some business and all the rest of
You
it
like the
again.
game of
So
it, don't you? You like the game of like, I can imagine now that you've got loads of little plates spinning, that it's quite entertaining. You're like, oh, I got a bit of property here. What do I have to do to like turn that from here to here? I've got an advisory call. Maybe I can jump in and help that person. Or maybe I might take a wee slice and do a bit of sweat equity here and some money. So your brain must be firing on different projects all day long.
Yeah, I do love it. I do love it, and I think that's one thing I suppose you realize when you want to sit back a little bit. Like I did, you love you love business, and I've always loved sales and marketing as well. So, um, I it helps obviously when you enjoy the process.
Mm.
But yeah, you're spot on. It's yeah, and I think that comes into when you're trying to help other people as well, like starting up and founders and different people you're coaching. It's like if you love it, some things come easy to you, and you're going to do the reps on stuff. Whereas, yeah, some people maybe don't love it as much. So then certain things come harder, and you start understanding people a little bit more. Because I think there's a certain stage in life when you're younger, you just think everyone's the same as you, don't you? And then you're surprised when they're not.
Mm. What keeps you measured throughout the week? What makes you not like with a bit of money in your bank account and still youngish, like go bonkers and lose a run of yourself? Or have you had a 6 month a 6 month where you just were like going wild and like what is like how do you get your mind right?
Yeah, I got that out of the way probably early 20s, mate. So, and going into the 20s a little bit. So, in terms of those days, probably got it out of the system and certainly don't regret it as well. Yeah, ultimately, mate, like my first job on this planet is being a father. We'll catch for again before we recorded, catching up about the kids and all the rest out of it. Um, and then obviously that is my main priority. And keep busy on that side of things, as you know. Um, yeah, like what else keeps me grounded? Good question. It's going to sound cheesy as fuck. Like I really buzz off helping others. Like
It does sound cheesy
really,
as fuck, yeah.
it does massively. But that's like it keeps me going. Like my
Mm.
biggest win last year was one of the lads I'd invested in messaging me, who obviously started up, had been skinning and all the rest of it. Texted me last year saying, right, got 4 kids by the way, and he said, look, I've got my second all inclusive. Fuck it, I'm going away for October half term, taking all the family. I'm taking time off, and I'm like, that's class. You know what I mean? That's absolutely class. When you've been through that first 18 months of starting up, that you can just say, fuck it, I'm doing that. Um, so yeah, that try keep fit a little bit. Just
What do you
I
do to
say
keep fit?
level down. What do I do to keep fit? Running, a gym, started a bit of jiu-jitsu, and I'm sure you'll absolutely chin me at that because it's,
How much have how much are you doing?
it's just once a week,
Ah,
so
it's not enough, eh?
just up the road from me. So
Are you getting murdered once a week?
absolutely pummeled, yeah,
That's hard,
absolutely
eh?
pummeled.
It's I don't recommend once a week, hey. It's it's not enough to stop getting murdered. It's
I need
like
a working holiday in Gibraltar, and
yeah,
we can
yeah, mate.
do a little intensive.
Yeah, well, listen, come on over, we'll put our heads together. You can do some jiu-jitsu. I've just sent telling you before where I've rented a nice villa in La Duquesa, or it's not La Duquesa, Al Anyway, the
Sounds good.
so business jiu-jitsu. It's flying out. I was coaching a class yesterday, and we're all over 40, and there's 5 of us. 2 people got injured.
Really, I've seen that on your Instagram. To be fair, I've seen that you were doing like an over 40s thing.
Uh,
But yeah, I love it. It might have been some of your Instagram stories that you thought I might dip the toe in the water on this.
yeah,
So you
it's
might
a
have been
great thing to get your kid
little
into.
influencer. I agree. I agree completely. He's absolutely football mad and doing great at that. But my old man has always been a big believer in martial arts. He had a boxing,
Yeah.
judo, karate, all sorts as kids. So I think it's certainly a good one to get little man
Uh,
into.
I have mine in football 3 4 times a week, rugby once, and then jiu-jitsu 3. So they're going on that. One of the things like with kids and sports, I think I tried too many when I was growing up,
Mm.
and while that has its benefits, I don't think I've really specialized in something. So I've been really like to my I kind of let them try everything really early on, and then now that they've chosen, I'm like, that's it. You're not going to learn a violin next week. You know, you're not not. I'm not saying you're not going to be doing gymnastics. Like the school were like, oh, your youngest is really talented. We want to put him into gymnastics. It was like yeah, he has a schedule, he has his routine. Leave him alone.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we're going to bring it back into business here, aren't we? With the easy one in terms of like it's like flipping niches every fucking 3 months, isn't it? Like you're not going to get good at one thing.
It's hard though.
So
The green-eyed monster. Who was I talking to about this? Maybe it was Rich Gibbard just before you. But thinking about Rectorac was hard last year, and Recward was paying the bills. The Rectorac paid some, but not much, and I managed to keep the staff together, and we built the learning and development project. So like all things are going, but when I see that, and then I see other niches where people are like 30 grand fee, 40 grand fee, this, that. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, and the hard thing is you could then jump in and try and do that, and then you lose all the other stuff. And then you're
yeah,
looking for a job. It's super hard to not to keep measured on it.
yeah, yeah. No, I completely get it, and it's the same with gamblers, isn't it? You only hear about the good stuff. Like you only hear about the wins. It's easy to kind of like get your head turned with it as well. But again, like people who are probably like, I've got mates who are still in recruitment and um, still doing like really, really good years, like 500,000 quid and stuff like that, even in difficult times. And it's like they've done the fucking reps, like it's compounded. Like, do you know what I mean? They weren't doing that in the early days. So it's not like we're going to flip markets and all of a sudden in 2 or 3 months we're going to be having 100 grand months or whatever it is. So it's easy, isn't it, to believe the hype sometimes. But yeah, naturally, I think there's times where if it's a complete dead horse and going boxing every week and getting your head smashed in and crying your eyes out, then it might be time to go and try LA or something. But it's
Yeah, like it's an interesting one because I coached about 100 startups during COVID and after that. Sorry,
yeah,
after COVID, and I did a mastermind program and all that. And you get an insight into like who is the person that's setting up these businesses, and so many of them are not in business now.
mm,
And the ones who are professionally trained at an agency are nearly all the ones who are actually still in business when I was looking through them all. So it's like the one that served their time and got to billing manager were the ones that have really kicked on since. And the others that were a bit bouncy in their careers had a good run when the market was good. And then when it cut, nothing. So I think people were nearly a bit too quick to get an automation tool, set up a recruitment company, and think they'd live happily ever after. I was blaming Rich Gibbard earlier for him selling automation to everybody in the UK and everybody's inbox being spam because of him. But
been working for a little bit. No, I get it. And I think, again, it's like cliches are cliches for a reason, aren't they? And like a
yeah,
lot of the stuff that we say, it's like a great time uh, the worst time to start a business is probably in fucking good times because you get used to that. You think it's
yeah,
easy. And probably the best time to start a business is right in the tough times. Um, I think, yeah, there's been a lot of casualties, haven't they? Like across the board over the last 18 months. And we can't put it all down to like getting used to the good times because there's obviously a lot of different reasons why. But um,
you have
yeah,
to arrest your cost base quick. Like I remember Andy was saying to me, he was like, "Listen, there's a storm coming." He's like, "I know everybody's saying it's good. Just tighten your belt, look at your costs, like start acting now, and know that just going to have to ride it out for the next year." And he was right. Storm Crow Hallett himself. Um,
so yeah, it's good to have that heads up. So fair dues to Andy on that. Like if we can,
yeah.
if we've all got a weatherman in the background. It's good knowing a little bit of the forecast. But I think it's a really really interesting time. Um, and yeah, you've probably got some thoughts on it as well in terms of look the way that a lot of these, even some like a lot of the bigger guys that have put back. Like I've been in offices recently where they used to have 50 heads in there, and there's now only 6 or 7 in there. There's a
Mm,
massive office, and so or some have gone bust, and then they're starting up again. I think it's going to be really interesting times in terms of how people are building back, and doing things differently. And I'm sure
I
you've
don't
got your
think
thoughts on that.
nobody's going to do anything differently.
You know what I think?
I think maybe they might be a bit more cautious on real estate,
Mm,
and they might be negotiating harder on their different contracts and keeping eyes on their
yeah,
contracts and knowing that. Um, but it's usually the LinkedIn contracts. Like if you listen to John Gaughan's interview with,
yeah, I did. Yeah,
yeah, and he talked a lot about the LinkedIn contracts, and that's the one that really sent him under. Um, so yeah, I think ultimately when the good times come, and they're I've seen the last week like or requirements have gone through the roof. People like the market's moving again. It's it just feels crazy. So thank
yeah,
God, like it's and LinkedIn's busier, and they're like you just feel there's a bit more confidence and optimism despite whatever the government's doing. It seems to be working regardless. Um, but I think recruitment firms are always going to be the same. They're always going to hire three. If one of them survives, great. It's just if in hiring those three, make your decision that the two aren't going to make it early. Don't be carrying, don't be carrying people that you don't need to.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's the big things. Your long-term tech licenses. So in the recruitment game, recruiter licenses, and any other long-term tech licenses. Your real estate, so your office licenses. They're gonna. Thing is with staff, yeah, you're not in a long-term license with them, but there's like an emotional tie-in.
aye,
Um,
I know, I
and
know.
it's like the amount of times it's like you speak to people, it's like gut feeling. I had this gut feeling about them like a year ago, and the amount of conversations I have with people as well, it's like got this decision to make on a member of staff, um, and it's tough. Like we're all human beings, and hopefully want to help people, but I think it's hard to get rid of that two out of the three quickly, isn't it?
Hey, it's
Sometimes.
tough. It's tough. I had one of my guys not performing. She calls me yesterday. Hey, I think I need some tough love. And I was like, all right, how about, I said, our job's really simple. Like, I mean, you have to either be brilliant at social media, brilliant at building relationships on both aisles, or brilliant at cold calling. How would you mark yourself out of 10 on these three things? And are you do on effort and ability? And we're like, be honest. And it was like, yeah, I'm not cutting it. All right. Why aren't you cutting it? So no, it's been a long run and blah 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 blah, and it's been tough and this and that. It's like, all right, well, you should probably quit then, or go have a think about it. I'm going to go speak with Charlotte, and then you can call me back, and then calls back. Actually, uh, I'm gonna give it a proper go. I'm gonna get my okay, all right, fine. Let's see. I said, but what's going to change? And she's like, I don't know. Like, are you asking me to micromanage you? Like because like I'm pretty easygoing, I just let like especially if they're there for a long time, you expect them just to get on with it. Yes. I was like, okay, so you need that. Yes. Okay. We'll do that and we'll see. We'll get it back up. Because the other thing that you don't want to do is to accept that some people just aren't good in a tight market. And that doesn't mean that they're a bad employee. It means that the market's coming back. As long as they're not going to cost you an absolute fortune, you're not paying over the odds. On the way up, that person could be really valuable to you. So, do you take the hit, or it's hard to know, right? If you're doing that at scale, you can't. At scale, you have
Yeah,
to be super. You're out. Who's going to be on that seat? Have them fight for the seat. Make it work. But when you're a small family business, those relationships, as you just said, you feel that obligation towards them.
yeah, yeah. Um, it all comes back to attitude, doesn't it? Like the attitude's there, and but again, that doesn't last forever, doesn't it? Like if results aren't there and the business is under pressure from an economic perspective, it's like that. It doesn't last forever, and I think they're the fucking toughest decisions when someone's got the right attitude, but ultimately it's just not working out. But again, it's reps, isn't it? It gets easier the more you do of it, and the rest of it as well. But I don't know. I think there will be some changes. I think in terms of like in terms of building back smarter, I think people are getting savvier on like marketing and BD, or some people are, and all that type of stuff. I do think the South
So,
African
so
or
I'm
outsource
gonna jump
model.
in on that piece, right?
Yeah.
So what they'll tell you is, no, 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 I'm going to hire billers, I'm going to hire 360, we're going to be more sales focused until they win a major account and they need to fill loads of jobs. And then they'll go right back to type. And
Mm,
because it's too hard to say no to that money. And that's the way it, like, you can try and KPI these people to go out and do more, but a good biller, especially contract as well, they're going to focus in on that account and know that that's it. When that account falls over, they're not going to have their portfolio. It'll go back to square one. So you just have to keep hiring, and
yeah.
we get into the same system. Like, I'd love to know an example of somebody built back better, built back differently. Uh,
Interesting times. Interesting times. I think just the mindset of a recruiter,
yeah,
and salespeople and entrepreneurs and what we get excited. So when the market's there, we're gonna fucking go for it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, and I think that's a big important lesson as well. I remember someone saying to me, like, the first rule of business is staying in business.
yeah,
Like, there's gonna be good times, make hay. It's gonna be shit times, make sure you can fucking get by.
yeah,
And in terms of like the time served, then ride
yeah,
the good times, survive in the bad times, and you'll fucking do all right in the long term. You don't see that when you're first in business because you're just so zoomed in on like the micro, aren't you? Now, like, yeah, I think what is it, 11 years since I've been self-employed. Like, I get it now, and it makes sense. And there's also a lot of comfort in that as well. Obviously, it naturally impacts decision making as well.
all right. Best piece of advice you've ever been given for business?
For business, I'm going to stick to kind of like the recruitment and sales theme. The first thing that comes to my head. I'm sure there's different ones, but Irish guy actually, Stan Murray Hessian, director at Venn Group, who's probably my most impactful gaffer that I've had. Sure, a lot of people will agree with me, and I'm sure that he probably scared a few away as well at the same time. Um, he gave me loads of gems, absolutely loads of gems in the period of time that I was under his leadership. But one that's always stuck with me in sales and marketing is like, your job is to make sure you you're not in control of when someone buys, not in control when someone wants to change jobs. You're not in control of someone when someone wants to fucking hire. Like, your job is to make sure that when those things do happen, you're their first phone call. And that was applied to like cold call. It was like every single call, like, what needs to happen to make sure I'm your first phone call when you need X,
I like
when
that.
you've got this problem. And the next call would always be last time you took, because people were like, well, what needs to happen? Like, it causes some friction. Well, I can't be asked thinking, Richie, my first call, mate. Next call, there's always a bit of a catch up. By the way, last time we spoke, you said, when you need X, I'm your first phone call, aren't I? Yeah, yeah, you got Rich. Just planting the seeds in the head. Like,
Mm.
and I've kind of taken that philosophy a lot in terms of like marketing as well. Like, just being everywhere, like making sure that like the attention stage that I talked about everywhere. It's like people are too soon to like try and sell all the time, but we're not in control of that. But what we are in control of is that when they need or when they've got the problem that we can fix or they need the thing that we do, we're the first name that pops to mind. Back in the day, it was just the phone, wasn't it? But this day and age, we could be all over social media and all the rest of it. So yeah, that's always stuck with me, that one, mate.
All right, let's leave it there. Thanks so much, Rich.
That's one, Dollar. Good to catch up, mate.